You know, some people will not believe this, but it is truly a privilege for me to introduce the introducer. They will say that I will want to say something nice because he's on the salary committee of Wachovia Corporation, and that's true. However, it is a privilege for me to introduce John F. Watlington, Jr., who is chairman of the executive committee of the Wachovia Corporation. He's the former chief executive officer of the Wachovia Corporation. He's a director of Piedmont Airlines, and in the round table of Newcomen, we sit around somewhat equal, but he is somewhat more equal than the rest of us. Well, doesn't he look like it? He is the honorary chairman of the North Carolina Committee of Newcomen Society in North America, and it is a great pleasure for me to present a fine friend of this state, this city, and this country. John?
Thank you, Scotty. I wish you could have made that a little bit longer. I was thoroughly enjoying it. Ladies and gentlemen, not long ago I had a great privilege. I had the opportunity to ride in the cockpit on a trial run of a Boeing 727 Piedmont Airlines plane. It was one of the most interesting and exciting experiences that I've had because you were impressed with the strength and the grace and the agility and the loveliness of a wonderful plane as it took off and as it flew and as it landed. And as I thought about it, I began to think that I some way understand a little bit better why Tom Davis is so enthusiastic about his work and about his company, because it is an exciting experience, it is an exciting company, and he does it in such a magnificent and wonderful way. Tom and I have been personal friends and business associates for many years. We've served together on the boards of the Wachovia Bank and of the Piedmont Airlines, and it gives me a pleasure tonight to be able to say a few words about a man that I have much admiration and fondness for. I've flown Piedmont to many cities throughout the length and breadth of the area that it serves, from Miami to Memphis to Charlottesville to Chicago to New York to Boston. And as I have gone through these points, it has always been my experience that the people of Piedmont have a sincere and healthy respect for Tom Davis. The pilots and the stewardesses and the ground personnel all ask about him whenever you come into their station. It is evident from them that his enthusiastic spirit has been absorbed by the entire organization. He has surrounded himself with good people at all levels and has constantly demonstrated his interest in their welfare. This attitude has pervaded Piedmont Airlines, and it has given it one of the best service records in the country. Tom's executive abilities extend far beyond the personnel area. He has had the vision, the courage, the stamina to develop Piedmont from a small flying service into one of the largest and the most prosperous regional airlines in the country. Today, it is the envy of many other airlines. Although many other cities have benefited from Piedmont services, our local community has received the greatest value. Tom was born in Winston-Salem in 1918, and he lived here until he attended the University of Arizona. He returned to Winston-Salem in 1939 and became associated with the Camel City Flying Service. He was named vice president and treasurer of the company in 1940 when it became Piedmont Aviation, and in 1943 he was elected president and treasurer. This year he became chairman and treasurer of the company. His personal contributions to Winston-Salem have grown through the years as Piedmont has grown. These have included work with the Chamber of Commerce, serving as a trustee of Wake Forest University, fundraising for the Bowman Gray School of Medicine, and support for many other worthwhile community organizations and institutions. Tom has been recognized for this involvement both in the community and in the airline industry. He was named the Young Man of the Year not long ago in Winston-Salem, and in North Carolina a few years ago he was named, he received the Tony Janus Award for the outstanding contributions that he has made to the airline industry. These are only a few of the honors that he has received. One of the true inspirations for Tom Davis over the years has been his gracious wife, Nancy. Both Tom and Piedmont Aviation owe a real debt of gratitude to her, and we are happy that she is with us here this evening for this special occasion. As I mentioned earlier, I am pleased to be asked to introduce this fine friend of mine this evening. It is an honor which many people would have cherished. All of them would express the same sentiments about him that I have, because he is genuinely appreciated and respected by the industry and the great area which Piedmont Aviation serves. It gives me a great deal of pleasure and satisfaction to present to you my good friend, Tom Davis.
Thank you, John Watlington. Scotty, I must say that you are a masterful master of ceremony. I couldn't help but sympathize with you a little bit a minute ago when you were trying to get this speaker operating here, and recalling a time when I was being introduced to speak to a civic club in Charleston, West Virginia. And they were having similar difficulties with the speaker. And so the gentleman who was introducing me, he immediately, when the thing started operating, turned to the audience and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are sorry for the inconvenience, but our speaker has a loose screw." I'm immediately looking around for somebody else to introduce. Warren, I want to tell you, too, in all sincerity, how much I appreciate that beautiful invocation. It rang the bell. It was typical Warren Carr fashion. And Pete Hayes, thank you so much for your part and the Newcomen Society and North American's part in this great occasion. We're extremely flattered to have been selected by the Society to be so honored tonight and to have this opportunity to visit with so many wonderful, wonderful friends. Probably one of the most exhilarating experiences of the evening, though, is the opportunity to look down on my board of directors. Some of them don't have an opportunity to do that very often. And thank goodness, because the guidance and the leadership that we get from that group is there's just no way to really tell you how grateful I am for their steadfast support over all the years, and to share with you the truth that this is indeed a working board of directors. They don't get paid enough, but they certainly do make a tremendous contribution to this company. And John, for such a great introduction, I couldn't help but think about last week when we had the dedication ceremonies over at the medical center, when Dick Janeway told a little story, and it was so appropriate for this occasion. I hope he won't mind if I steal it. And it went something to the effect that after a very flowery introduction, one of the guests in the audience turned to his partner on his right and said, "You know, I know that fellow that he just introduced, and you don't want to put too much stock in that." He says, "It's sort of like the hair tonics and the body lotions and all these other fancy things that you can buy these days that make you smell so good and feel so good. But if you drink it, it'll kill you. If you swallow it, it'll kill you." So don't swallow too much of what John has said here, but I am certainly grateful that he is one of the greatest supporters that our company and I personally have ever had. My fellow members of Newcomen and guests, on behalf of the thousands of people who have had a part in the growth and progress of this company, the one you honor tonight, let me first express, with all the sincerity of my command, our appreciation to the Newcomen Society and to those of you here who have come to pay tribute to Piedmont Aviation Incorporated. I am indeed overwhelmed and honored beyond words that so many of you would take the time out to come and share these moments with us. It's one of the most humbling experiences of my life, and there's just no way that I can tell you how grateful that I am, and I'm confident that I speak on behalf of all of our directors, all of our officers, and all of our employees, that you would pay this respect to a company that we hope is making a contribution to all of you and to our great land. And indeed, there are literally thousands of people who have contributed so much to our growth and progress. Today, there are over 6,000 Piedmont employees, several hundred retirees, and 8,000 stockholders who have made it all possible. I am painfully and apologetically aware in the time allotted to me it will be impossible to mention but only a few who should be named for their special contribution. Certainly the foremost is John Watlington. John earned his stripes as a true booster of Piedmont during the difficult days of 1958, when we were trying to finance our purchase of F-27 prop jets. He was then the new president of Wachovia Bank and Trust Company. Some of you may remember that the economy was not very robust in those days, and for an airline our size, it was indeed a major undertaking to try to raise $6.5 million. Other similar companies had tried and failed, but one of my most vivid recollections of John was his comment one day in his office when we were sitting around debating this matter, trying to figure out a way. When there appeared to be no other way, his simple statement was, "There's got to be a way." And there was a way. And when John Watlington says there's got to be a way, you can bet your bottom dollar there will be. Largely through his efforts and determination, Piedmont was one of the very first airlines to put into operation a modern, jet-powered, air-conditioned, pressurized aircraft designed specifically for short-haul local service air transportation. So for your years of effort on behalf of Piedmont and for the very generous introduction, John, we are eternally grateful. It is difficult to know where to begin when trying to relate the history of a company that is the culmination of the ideas, the efforts, the encouragement, and the support of so many people. How far back should one go to say, in the beginning? While Piedmont celebrated its 40th anniversary just a year ago, in reality, its true genesis was somewhat earlier. If you would pardon a personal reference, it could have been the day that I came home for lunch from high school one day, and my father said to me right out of the blue, "Why don't you go out and take a flying lesson this afternoon?" I'll never know whether he had found out that I had been saving my allowance just for that purpose and, in fact, had already secretly taken 2 or 3 flying lessons. In any event, he didn't say anything about it, and I didn't either. But I didn't waste any time getting out to the airport. Another event which played a significant part in the establishment of Piedmont was the offer of a job in the summer of 1939 selling airplanes by L.S. McGinnis. Mac had been my flight instructor 4 years earlier, before I went away to college, and operating as Camel City Flying Service had obtained the North Carolina State Distributorship franchise for the famous Piper Cub and Stinson Reliant aircraft. The pre-med training I had received at the University of Arizona was quickly forgotten, and I jumped at the chance to get paid to fly rather than having to rent an airplane to build up my flying time. About a year later, 2 other individuals, Charles E. Norfleet, better known as Charlie, many of you know him, and R.J. Reynolds Jr., better known as Dick, came into the picture. Charlie was an officer in the trust department of Wachovia Bank. One of his responsibilities was secretary of the Forsyth County Airport Commission, supervising the operation of the airport, which had been given to the city by a few public-spirited citizens. Meanwhile, Dick had loaned McGinnis the funds to start Camel City flying service, but he was having a pretty difficult time ever getting repaid. One day, Charlie called me down to the office and asked if I would be interested in becoming more permanently and financially involved in the aviation business. And if so, Dick would like to talk to me. So that afternoon, I went by Dick's house, which, by the way, happened to be right across the street from where I'm living right now, so it's all come almost full circle. And he suggested that if I would pay off Mac's note, he would see that I became the principal stockholder of the company. That event led to the dissolution of Camel City Flying Service and the formation of Piedmont Aviation Incorporated on July 2nd, 1940. I don't know why we didn't pick out July the 4th, except the lawyers said it wouldn't be legal, I guess. From the very beginning, our motto has been, Piedmont sets the pace. That's why we call our airplanes pacemakers. If you'll notice on the nose of them, they're all pacemaker designated by some area that we serve. After all, aviation was born at Kitty Hawk, where the Wright brothers made their first flight. And it was, of course, most appropriate that our company make the effort to live up to the heritage and keep North Carolina in the forefront of aviation. So in the remaining time that's allotted to me, I would like to review some of the major achievements of our company, which I hope will indicate that we are meeting that obligation and that challenge, at least to some extent. During our first year and a half, we were engaged in aircraft sales and service, flight training, and charter operations. To help meet the payroll, we also hopped passengers over town on Sunday afternoons for $3 a head. The major effort, however, was the establishment of retail aircraft dealer outlets with other flying service companies at airports throughout the state. By the time World War II started, we had more dealers and were selling more aircraft in the state than all of our competitors combined. In fact, we had become one of the largest wholesale aircraft distributors in the United States. We had also established the first CAA-approved, that's the counterpart of what you hear about the FAA these days, approved aircraft and engine overhaul facility between Washington and Atlanta. Now, I have no intention of boring you with a lot of traveling salesman stories, but perhaps one event in our early history might give you a flavor of what the aircraft sales business was like in those days. One of my most vivid memories as an airplane salesman happened in the fall of 1940. We had a prospect in Mount Airy, North Carolina, and since there was, for you out-of-staters who are here, and since there was no airport there, I had been using a cow pasture along the side of a small stream just north of town. After a demonstration flight with my customer, we were sitting on a log just outside the fence, and I was giving him the old sales pitch, as you all know. And I'll never forget that fellow. He was the first person I had ever seen that had a watch with diamonds around on the face of it instead of numerals. I just knew that I was going to get that order. About that time, I noticed the wings of my airplane rocking back and forth, and I got up to see what could be causing that. And I've never seen such a big black bull in my life. He had his head up under the wingtip on the other side, and he was rocking his horns back and forth like this. And this poor little airplane was sitting there shaking. And it was the brightest, shiniest, red Cub coupe you've ever seen. I could just visualize that bull plowing through the side of my beautiful little airplane, so I jumped over the fence and tried to scare him off with waving my briefcase at him. All he did was lower his head, start snorting, and pawing the ground as if I was the next target. It occurred to me that the only possible way I could frighten him off was perhaps by the noise of the engine. In those days, there were no starters on most airplanes, and to start them, you had to go around and pulled the propeller through with a sharp pull. I ran around to the other side, reached in and turned on the switch, went back around in front of the airplane, pulled the prop through with all the strength that I could muster, hoping and praying all the time that the engine would start on the first pull. It did, and with that noise, the bull turned tail and ran bucking and kicking across the field. Without a word to my prospect, I jumped in the airplane and took off. I never did see that prospect again. I never did land in that pasture again, and I never did get that order. That's about the time I decided I wanted to be an officer instead of a salesman. With the outbreak of the war, our efforts were almost totally devoted to flight training of pilots who later flew for the Air Transport Command or served as instructors for Army flight schools. We also operated a preliminary flight training school for cadets at Winston-Salem and an additional facility established later at Greensboro. We eventually became one of only 12, quote, Type A training centers in the United States. Furthermore, our record led to the selection of Piedmont by the U.S. State Department as one of the few flight schools to train pilots from Central and South American countries. The one thing of which we are most proud during this period is our safety record. Of the hundreds of students we trained during the war, not a single one suffered a serious injury. Toward the end of the war, we recognized the fact that we could not provide the jobs for the large number of employees we used in our training program if we simply reverted to the fixed-base general aviation sales and service business. Accordingly, in 1944, we filed an application with the CAB for a passenger, mail, and cargo local service route throughout the mid-Atlantic states. This application was consolidated for hearing by the CAB in a proceeding known as the Southeastern States case, along with the application of 26 other competing airlines. Piedmont was one of only 2 new airlines awarded a certificate of public convenience and necessity in that case, which was finally decided on April 4th, 1947. Meanwhile, another individual came into the picture who has also played a leading role in our progress and who has had a profound effect on our achievements. That person is none other than my dear, charming wife, Nancy Davis. We were married during the closing days of the war, and at that time the company was involved with the problems of transition from war to peacetime pursuits. Nancy stuck by me through it all and patiently sat through many, many long, boring hearings at the CAB when we were battling wits with competing companies for those airline routes. In fact, there are times when I wonder, I'm inclined to think that maybe she had more to do with our getting those routes than all of the testimony and proceedings and exhibits or anything else that we had to do. After getting our airline route certificate, we decided to continue the aircraft sales, service, maintenance, and flight training activities and established a general aviation division of the company. At the same time, we established the Piedmont Airlines division, each division to be operated autonomously under the corporate structure of Piedmont Aviation Incorporated. Perhaps the most rigorous and trying period in the history of our company was the launching of our airline operation. Aside from being an entirely new activity with the myriad of regulations and requirements associated with a public utility type of business, we were confronted with a lawsuit by one of the unsuccessful applicants for routes which we had been awarded. In addition, of course, we had to raise a substantial amount of capital to buy the DC-3 aircraft for the airline and to finance the heavy pre-operating expenses. The lawsuit went all the way to the Supreme Court, and that decision in our favor became quite a benchmark in airline legal history. About the same time, our other newly certificated airlines were attempting to start up in other sections of the country. Most of them were having a very difficult time raising money, even without a lawsuit hanging over their head. Nevertheless, With the assistance of another North Carolina-based company, Carolina Securities Company in Raleigh, we managed to complete a successful public stock offering and were in actual operation even before most of the other new airlines got started. It has been said that whatever impedes a man and doesn't stop him aids his progress. I'm inclined to believe that Piedmont's progress has been largely the result of the fantastic achievements and experience of the Piedmont people, all of our employees, and the support of many steadfast friends during that trying experience. All newly authorized airlines in those days were issued temporary certificates of only 3 years. After that time, new renewal applications had to be filed. After hearings and review of the operating record by the CAB, another temporary certificate was usually issued for not more than 5 years. In a landmark decision in 1952, renewing Piedmont's certificate, the CAB said, and I quote from the official CAB documents, "The record achieved by Piedmont is so outstanding as to merit special recognition. We would reward the carrier for its achievements and thereby offer an incentive to other carriers to strive for comparable results. This longer renewal is fully warranted by our confidence in the carrier based on its outstanding record." And we're indeed proud of the recognition the CAB gave us in those early days. This was the longest such renewal awarded by the board up to that time. Piedmont continued to set the pace. This was a fitting tribute to the host of dedicated Piedmont employees who had established a record as being one of the most efficiently operated airlines in the country. This achievement also, of course, made it possible for us to provide service to many small communities at a lower subsidy cost than any of the other local service airlines. With the newly issued longer-term certificate, we embarked on an expansion program. It included route extensions to Washington, Columbus, Ohio, Charlottesville, Virginia, and the entire replacement of Capital Airlines service over a route from Norfolk to Knoxville via Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem, Charlotte, Hickory, and Asheville. In the early 1950s, it was thank you, Scott. It was quite clear that short-haul air service serving small and medium-sized cities could never be profitable without subsidy support, unless a new modern aircraft more efficient than the DC-3 was available. To encourage the production of such an aircraft, Piedmont developed detailed specifications which were outlined in a paper presented to the Society of Automotive and Engineering and Aeronautical Engineers in New York in April of 1951. Following that, we visited with every major aircraft manufacturer in the United States and several in Europe, urging the development of such an aircraft meeting those specifications. Subsequently, the Fokker Company in Holland and Fairchild here in the States teamed up to produce the now famous F-27 turboprop, which closely followed the specifications we had outlined. In fact, one of the officials of Fokker said Piedmont's efforts were largely responsible for the development of the F-27. This aircraft, after more than 25 years, is still in production and holds the world's longest production record for any transport aircraft. We are proud of the part our company played in the development of an aircraft that would assure continued efficient, economical, short-haul air transportation. We took delivery of our first 8 F-27s in 1958 as a part of a long-range program to replace our aging DC-3s. This was, at that time, the largest order for any new aircraft by any local service airline. Subsequently, in 1961, we were able to obtain, under very favorable terms, all of TWA's remaining fleet of 17 Martin 404 aircraft, thereby permitting and expediting retirement of all DC-3s earlier than originally expected. We thus became the first local service airline to be completely equipped with air-conditioned, pressurized aircraft. These more modern aircraft, together with efficient operation and productive route expansion strategy, made it possible for us to become in 1966 the very first local service airline to operate profitably without the need of government subsidy for a full year. That was despite the fact that, for the most part, our route system covered a relatively sparsely populated area without the benefit of a large number of big metropolitan cities. Again, Piedmont set the pace. Meanwhile, our route development and expansion continued through the laborious task of proceedings as required under the old law by the Civil Aeronautics Board. Happily, we won more cases than we lost, probably thanks to Nancy, and in 1962 added Atlanta to our system. In 1966, we put New York on the map, our map, and in the next 2 years extended our routes to Nashville, Memphis, and Chicago. Our fleet modernization program continued with the acquisition of 10 larger 404 Fairchild FH-227s and 21 60-passenger Nihon YS-11s. In 1967, we began our first pure jet operations with 2 Boeing 727s. A year later, we placed into operation a fleet of 12 new Boeing 737s. This fine medium-range jet has become the mainstay of our fleet. Since that time, we have acquired 30 additional 737s. As a result of rapid growth during the recent years, we have purchased 9 used 727 aircraft, which were readily available to meet our pressing requirements for increased capacity. Our fleet today consists of 51 jets and 6 prop jets. We have 20 additional 737s on order or on option for delivery in 1982 and 1983, as well as 4 more 727 jets for delivery next spring. All of this growth has, of course, necessitated substantial additional capital. Fortunately, we've been able to meet these requirements with short and long-term borrowing, supplemented by retained earnings and issuance of convertible securities. We have not had to resort to common stock issues since our very first public offering in 1947. Our stock became listed on the New York Stock Exchange in September of 1978. Piedmont has a history of more profitable years of operation than all but 2 or 3 other U.S. airlines. We also have a longer record of dividend payments than most other airlines. In addition, our debt-equity ratio of 1.35 is one of the most favorable in the industry. Deregulation of the airlines by Congress in October of 1978 has had a profound effect on the entire industry. For Piedmont, it has made possible greater expansion in only 3 years' time than we were able to achieve under the original Federal Aviation Act in 30 years. In this respect, Piedmont is unique since most of the other airlines have not had the same experience. Ironically, we originally had serious doubts that deregulation would be the panacea that its supporters predicted. From our own standpoint, and particularly from the standpoint of the traveling public. On the other hand, it became clear that deregulation was going to be a fact of life, and importantly in this industry, even though it is a quasi-public utility type of an industry, our own analysis convinced us that we could indeed do very well in a deregulated environment. To meet this challenge, we decided on 2 courses of action. One was what we call our bypass strategy of route extensions to major cities, bypassing the historic connecting hubs such as Chicago, Atlanta, New York, and Washington, where we had traditionally fed our passengers to other long-haul carriers. Accordingly, within the past 3 years, we have extended service to Miami, Tampa, Orlando, Daytona Beach, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Boston, Denver, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Houston, and there's more to come. The other part of our strategy was to expand our previously successful concept of connecting hubs within our own system so as to feed our own long-haul flights. As a consequence, practically all of our new service has resulted in improved service to the public rather than simply expanding into markets that were already being well served by other very good airlines and duplicating what they were already doing. While we have never subscribed to the belief that the best test of success is bigness, it might be of some interest to put in perspective Piedmont's size relative to its counterparts in the industry. In terms of revenue, passenger miles, number of passengers carried, route miles flown, and other usual indices, there are only 3 of the original certificated local service airlines, now referred to generally as regional airlines, that are larger. Those 3, however, are larger only because and as a result of several mergers. In fact, Piedmont is one of only 2 of the original regional airlines whose growth has been entirely internal bootstrap growth. And the other Virgin is only about half as big as Piedmont. During our first year of operation, we carried 80,000 passengers. This year, we will carry 7 million passengers. In 1948, we flew 3 million miles. This year, we will fly 60 million miles. Total revenues in 1948 were $1,600,000, and this year they will exceed $600 million. Last year, Piedmont's growth of 23% in revenue passenger miles over the previous year far exceeded that of any other regional or trunk airline. In fact, most of the others had negative growth. Nevertheless, there are other criteria or goals which we believe are more significant and which we strive to attain. Foremost of these is good, high quality of service to the public. Perhaps the best measurement that we have regarding quality of service is the information published monthly by the CAB, reflecting the number of passenger complaints that they receive on each of the airlines. Over the years, since the CAB has been keeping these records, I'm proud to say that Piedmont has consistently received fewer complaints per 100,000 passengers carried than all but 1 or 2 other carriers. In many months, we will be in the top spot. In others, we may be in 2nd or 3rd place, seldom below that. Among all of the other trunk and regional airlines in the nation. More importantly, we have been able to maintain that enviable position even during recent years of very rapid growth when quality of service sometimes tends to suffer. Another significant index of quality of service in the airline business is on-time performance. It also tells you how good your pilots are. It tells you how well the mechanics are maintaining the aircraft. It tells you how efficiently the station, ramp, and baggage personnel are handling their responsibilities. And it tells you what kind of a job your scheduling department is doing. Here too, and again, despite one of the highest rates of growth in the industry, Piedmont ranked first in on-time performance among all the trunk and regional airlines in the country in 1980, according to CAB statistics. Another measure as to how well a company is meeting its responsibilities to society, in my opinion, is its stewardship. One of the very early decisions of our board of directors was the establishment of Piedmont Aviation Foundation. Recognizing the somewhat cyclical nature of the airline business, they felt that such a vehicle to which the company would contribute during profitable times would make possible a consistent record of participation in worthy charitable projects during lean years as well as good years. In this way, every year for many years, we have been able to participate in each of the 57 United Way campaigns on our system. In addition, we contribute to several foundations for independent colleges in states we serve. We help finance a host of hospital and educational building projects and many other deserving undertakings. Furthermore, our employees, I'm very pleased to say, have been unusually active in serving and contributing their time and talents to the community and in several social improvement projects. Of course, another constituency to whom we have a major obligation is our stockholder group. Here again, I believe, Piedmont sets the pace. An investor in our first public stock offering paid $1 a share. Since that time, our directors have declared 4 10% and 1 20% stock dividend. In addition, we have declared 30 cash dividends. If that investor had bought in 1947 1,000 shares, he would now have 1,750 shares. Accordingly, the original $1,000 investment would now have a market value of approximately $44,000. And that's not all. In the meantime, that stockholder would have received $4,200 in cash dividends. To the best of my knowledge, none of the regional airlines, and perhaps not more than 1 or 2 of the trunk airlines, can equal that record. Since another constituency is our dedicated, loyal group of employees. When Piedmont was incorporated in 1940, it had 5 employees. Today, as I mentioned earlier, there are over 6,000. We even have 218 retirees who are benefiting from one of the best pension plans in the business. In addition, we are quite proud of the low rate of turnover among our employee group. While I have no industry-wide statistics, I am inclined to believe we have one of the highest seniority levels in the industry, despite our rapid growth and high employment during recent years. In the meantime, our general aviation group of companies has continued to grow and prosper. Those activities now include Piedmont Aviation operations at Winston-Salem, Roanoke, Norfolk, and Richmond, Virginia. These facilities serve as outlets for beach aircraft, for whom we became a distributor in 1955. They also provide aircraft and engine maintenance service, flight training, charter service, storage, and fuel service. These operations also serve as a wholesale and retail distributor for 60 of the leading outstanding manufacturers of aircraft parts and materials, with warehouse distribution outlets at Winston-Salem and Gaithersburg, Maryland. They are one of the largest such wholesale distributors on the East Coast. The Piedmont Piper Sales Division continues our 40-year relationship with this leading aircraft manufacturer, serving retail dealer outlets throughout North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland. In addition, in 1971, we purchased Air Service Incorporated as a wholly owned subsidiary. This company has a large sales and service facility at the Greensboro High Point Regional Airport and also serves as a Beechcraft sales center. In 1965, we established the Piedmont Aerospace Institute as a tuition-supported technical training facility. At that time, there were no such schools in the southeastern United States to meet the growing demand for such training or even to meet our own requirements for highly skilled technicians. This school has a current enrollment of about 185 students from all over the United States and many foreign countries in the Orient, South America, and the Middle East. More than 1,000 students have graduated from this school. Where do we go from here? It has been said that those things which tend to facilitate transportation are most good to mankind. And when you stop to think about it, it's true even if only for the reason that transportation makes it easier for all of the people, all over the world, to get to know each other better. When you really get to know a stranger, in most instances, you learn to like him. So our opportunities and our challenges in this business are limitless. I mentioned earlier that our first motto was Piedmont sets the pace. At our annual management meeting last winter, we adopted another motto to go along with it, not replace it. It was 1981, we've only just begun. Thank you.